The blade at your throat is Roman steel. Yesterday you were free. You are Bran, a Gallic warrior, and an hour ago you were still fighting. Now your wrists are bound with rope that cuts deeper each time you pull against it. Around you, the survivors of your war band kneel in the mud, disarmed, while legionaries strip the dead of anything worth keeping. A Roman officer walks the line of prisoners, studying each face the way a butcher studies livestock. He stops in front of you. He says one word to the man beside him. So, you do not yet know that word has just decided the rest of your life. You do not know that within a year, a crowd of 50,000 people will be screaming your name inside a building that does not exist yet. You only know that you are still breathing, and that the men who captured you seem to think that matters. Your sword arm still aches from the fighting. Your hands are bound so tightly you can no longer feel your own fingers. You do not know the word gladiator yet. You are about to learn it the hard way. Pull back. But to understand how you got here, you need to go back to the battle that ended with you in chains instead of dead. 3 days earlier, you were defending a hill fort with 200 men of your tribe against a Roman column 3 times that size. The fighting lasted from dawn until well past midday, shield against shield, until your line finally broke under the weight of numbers you could not match. Most of your kin did not survive the retreat that followed. You did, because a centurion decided a strong, unwounded prisoner was worth more alive than dead. You were marched south for weeks, chained at the ankle to men who spoke your language and men who did not. Some nights you slept standing up, tied to a post, listening to the sound of other prisoners weeping in languages you had never heard before. By the time you reach a slave market outside Rome, you no longer flinch when strangers pry open your mouth to check your teeth. A man in a plain gray tunic buys you without ever asking your name. He is a lanista, the owner of a gladiator school, and has an eye for warriors who already know how to kill. He calls you an investment, the way a farmer might describe a good ox. You call yourself nothing at all, because for the first time in your life, what you call yourself does not matter to anyone but you. You are marched to a low stone compound outside the city walls. Above the gate, faded paint spells out a name, Ludus Rutilius. Somewhere inside those walls, dozens of other captured men are already living the same sentence you are about to begin. You do not know yet that the man waiting inside that gate will decide whether you live long enough to see the following spring. You had a wife and a young son in that hill fort. You do not yet know if either of them survived the retreat, and no one you are chained can tell you. The retreat itself lasted less than an hour, though it felt like the length of a season. Men you had known your whole life falling in the mud around you while the Roman line advanced without slowing. Before you go further, if stepping inside history like this is what you're here for, subscribe to POV Chronicles right now. Every story on this channel puts you inside a real moment from the past, researched carefully and brought to life with careful cinematic detail. Now back to the story. Dr. Rutilius runs a ludus the way a smith runs a forge, with fire, patience, and no room for waste. He is a former gladiator himself, missing 2 fingers on his left hand, a permanent reminder of fight he does not discuss. He watches you spar on your first morning without saying a single word. You are handed a wooden training sword heavier than any blade you have ever held, weighted deliberately to build strength you do not yet have. Within an hour, your arms are shaking. Within a week, you can hold a guard stance for the length of a temple prayer, without your shoulders giving out. You are not the only captured warrior in the yard. A Numidian named Nazenus trained beside you, sold into the ludus 2 winters before you arrived. He does not speak your language, and you do not speak his, but you learn each other's names before you learn each other's words, trading gestures in half-formed Latin across the practice yard. Some men in the ludus do not last a season. A German named Otho collapses during a summer drill and never gets back up. Nobody stops training. Dr. Rutilius simply says a name you do not recognize, and 2 men carry Otho's body toward the gate without breaking stride. You realize slowly that surviving training is its own kind of fight. You start sparring with Nazenus after hours, trading techniques neither of you were taught, because you have both decided the same thing without saying it aloud. Whatever happens in that arena, you intend to be the one walking out of it. By your 6th month, Rutilius stops correcting your footwork. He starts watching you fight the way he watches men he expects to earn him money. He assigns you the armor of a murmillo, a heavy helmet, a curved shield, a short stabbing sword, and tells you, for the first time, that you might actually survive this. At night, lying awake on your straw mat, you sometimes catch yourself practicing the footwork in your mind before you even realize you're doing it. The way of prayer becomes automatic long after the meaning behind it fades. Rutilius keeps a wooden tally on the wall of the yard, one notch for every man who survives a full year of training. By midsummer, your notch sits beside Nazenis's, closer together than either of you expected. A retired gladiator visits the Ludus one afternoon to advise Rutilius on new recruits, and you watch the way Roman spectators near the gate treat him. Half admiration, half unease, as though they cannot decide whether he is a hero or a curiosity. You never forget the sound of that wooden tally being carved. News reaches the Ludus before it reaches the streets. The new emperor, Titus, is finishing an amphitheatre his father began years before, a building larger than anything Rome has ever built for spectacle. It is almost finished. It needs gladiators, and it needs them by the hundred. Rutilius gathers a yard and tells you plainly, the opening games will run for 100 days straight. Every school in Italy is being asked to send its best men to fill the program. You are being sent, along with Nazenis and a dozen others who have earned Rutilius's confidence over the past year. Nazenis grips your forearm the way warriors do before a battle neither of you has chosen. Whatever happens in that arena, he says, in the broken Latin you have both learned together, we do not forget each other's names. You repeat the words back to him in your own tongue, and for a moment, neither of you needs a translation. The night before you leave for Rome, you cannot sleep. You lie on a straw mat listening to men breathing in the dark around you, knowing that some of them will not make the journey home. You think of the hill fort where this began, and the 200 men who did not survive it. You wonder, quietly, whether you are still one of the lucky ones, or whether luck simply changes its shape as it follows you. In the morning, Rutilius hands you your armor himself, a heavy bronze helmet with a narrow eye slit, polished until it catches the early light, a curved rectangular shield, scarred from drills but sound. He does not wish you luck. He tells you to remember your footwork, and to make him proud of the money he spent on you. You march toward Rome with 40 other gladiators under armed guard, dust rising from the road behind you like a second column following the first. Somewhere ahead of you, rising over the rooftops of the city, you see it for the first time, a vast curved wall of stone and arches, still ringing faintly with the sound of masons' hammers, built to hold more people than your entire tribe ever numbered in its best year. You pass a farmer's car on the road, and for a moment the smell of turned earth reminds you so completely of home that you nearly stop walking. A guard spear shaft against your shoulder reminds you just as quickly that you no longer choose where your feet go. Somewhere behind you in the column, a young Thracian recruit named Velo asks you quietly whether the arena is as large as people say. You tell him the truth, because Rutilius taught you that lying to a frightened man before a fight only makes him slower when it matters. You pass through the outskirts of Rome itself for the first time, streets wider and busier than anything in your homeland, strangers pointing at the column of gladiators the way children point at a passing procession of exotic animals. You keep your eyes forward and say nothing, because Rutilius taught you that a gladiator who lets the crowd see his fear before he has even reached the arena has already lost something he cannot easily win back. The morning of the games, the amphitheatre is already full before the sun fully clears the hills. 50,000 voices fill a space built to hold every single one of them. You have never heard a sound like it in your life, not even on the day your hill fort fell. You wait beneath the arena floor in a corridor lit by torches, listening to the muffled roar above you rise and fall with each event of the morning program. Somewhere up there, animals you have never seen before in your life are being released into a landscape built specifically to kill men in front of a crowd that is paid to watch it happen. Nazenis stands beside you in the torchlight, checking the straps on his own armor with hands that are not quite steady. Neither are yours, though you do not say so out loud. A guard calls your names from a list. A wooden gate grinds upward on iron chains, and daylight floods the corridor like something physical, warm and blinding after the darkness underground. You climb a short ramp, and the noise above you becomes a noise around you, all at once, from every direction at once. The arena floor is white sand, already dark in patches from the events that came before yours. Above it, tier upon tier of Roman citizens rise toward a bright morning sky. More people in one place than you have ever imagined existing, somewhere in the shaded box reserved for the emperor. Titus himself watches the games he has built this entire structure to celebrate. You are given no time to take in the scale of it. Your opponent is already crossing the sand toward you, sword raised, shield angled the way Rutilius taught you to expect from a trained man, and 50,000 people are already shouting for one of you to fall before the sun reaches its peak. Somewhere in the crowd above you, ordinary Romans have brought food, wagered coin, and brought their own children to watch, the way your own people once gathered to watch a boar hunt. You notice, absurdly, that your hands have stopped shaking the moment the gate finally opens, as though your body decided somewhere along the march in the ludus that fear was a luxury it could no longer afford. Somewhere far above the arena floor, awnings stretch across sections of the crowd to block the worst of the midday sun, an engineering detail so ordinary to the Romans around you that none of them seem to notice at all. You have trained for this exact motion 1,000 times, and your body remembers it before your mind fully catches up. You turn his blade wide with your shield and step inside his reach, the way Rutilius drilled into you until your legs ached and your hands blistered. The fight does not last as long as the fear beforehand suggested it would. Your opponent stumbles on a patch of sand still slick from the event before yours, and you are on him before he recovers his footing. You could end it in a single motion. 50,000 people are already screaming for you to do exactly that, the sound rolling over you like weather. Instead, you glance up toward the imperial box, the way Rutilius taught every man in the ludus to do without exception. The decision belongs to the crowd and the emperor, not to you alone, no matter how the sand beneath you seems to demand otherwise. A wave of sound rolls around the amphitheatre, some of it calling for mercy, fists and cloth wave in the air, some of it calling for blood, just as loud, just as certain. You hold your position, sword steady at your opponent's throat, waiting on a verdict that is not yours to give, your chest heaving with every breath. Titus raises a hand. The gesture is small against the size of the crowd, barely visible from where you stand, but every eye in the amphitheater finds it instantly, the way a field of wheat turns all at once toward the wind, thumb turned upward. Mercy. Your opponent is dragged from the sand, alive, his chest still rising and falling beneath his armor. You are still standing in the middle of the largest building you have ever seen, breathing hard, aware for the first time that Naezenus is shouting your name from somewhere near the gate you both entered through less than an hour ago. You do not feel like a conqueror. You feel like a man who has just been allowed to keep living, in front of 50,000 strangers who will forget your face by nightfall, and somehow that feels like enough for today. For one long breath, the entire amphitheater seems to hold perfectly still, 50,000 people waiting on the same small gesture you are waiting on, and you realize this is the strangest kind of silence you have ever stood inside. Naezenus told you once that the worst part of surviving a fight is the silence immediately afterward, when your body is still braced for a blow that never comes. You understand exactly what he meant the moment the crowd's noise finally breaks over you again. You fight 3 more times before the 100 days of games are finally over. You do not lose again. By the final week, some in the crowd call out a name for you that is not the one your mother gave you at birth, in a hill fort that no longer exists. It is the only name most of Rome will ever know you by. Naezenus survived the games as well, standing beside you at the closing ceremony with a scar across one forearm that will never fully fade. Neither of you receives a wooden sword marking a gladiator's freedom that year, but Rutilius tells you both that survivors of their first 100 days rarely fight forever. You go back to the ludus. You keep training. You keep waiting. You still think about the hill fort sometimes, and the men who never made it this far. You're no longer sure what freedom means. If a story like this is what you come to POV Chronicles for, subscribe right now. Step into the next one with us. Hit like if that moment on the sand, waiting on a single hand to decide your life, hit you the way it hit us researching it, and drop a comment below. First, would you have looked up at that crowd, or made the decision yourself? Second, let us know where in the world you're watching this from.